Okay, I warn you in advance for the translator. I've had lots of caffeine, and I'm renowned for high word density. Okay, so I'm going to be spending the next 20 minutes really talking about the need to move away from a pure prevention-based strategy and focus on one that's really leaning towards rapid detection and rapid remediation and resolution. So my name's James Stevenson. I'm the EMEA Security Director for Blue Coat's Advanced Threat Protection Group. A little bit of background. There are not many presentations that start off with pictures of Teletubbies and cows, so let me explain myself. I graduated about 11 years ago, full of life and irritating enthusiasm, and Symantec saw it fit to stick me in a decommissioned nuclear bunker where I stared at the Matrix for about 5 years and lost all social skills. But it gave me a very good understanding of SOC operations and also the strengths and weaknesses of the current tools we're using today: antivirus, IDS, SIM, Qualys scan results, etc. I also managed a global telco's IDS and SIM infrastructure, okay, for about 2 years. So again, very familiar with the strengths and weaknesses. And for the past 4 years, I've actually spent time implementing security intelligence and analytic solutions for government and commercial clients, say about 4 years. And I was really focusing on recording everything to identify zero-day malware, sensitive data leakage, and also to just educate analysts to be more proactive in their security. Don't just wait for a signature to be triggered. Be more proactive, go hunting in the network, and in doing so, you can reduce the attacker's window of opportunity. Okay? I'm not going to go into too much detail about the threat landscape. I'm sure you've seen many presentations talking about this, so I'll be very brief. There are 4 key entities intent in getting a foothold in your network. Okay? I don't care about their motivations, but what they want to do is get a foothold in your network. So they want to get bad stuff in for the purpose of getting good stuff out. Malware, remote access Trojans, etc. But again, I'm not too concerned about their motivations. It's more about how they get in, how they get out. Now, in response to those 4 key entities, whether that's hacktivists or state-sponsored espionage or organized crime elements, as you all know, we've deployed quite a robust defense in-depth strategy, antivirus, IDS, SIM, DLP, etc. And it's not working. Again, I'm sure you've seen many presentations talking about various breaches that happen every day. For example, Adobe that just happened, and I'll briefly cover that one in just a second. The problem is visibility. We're heavily relying on signature-based technologies, okay, such as IDS and antivirus, IPS. And those are good at detecting known, publicly disclosed attacks and exploits. Okay? But they have very limited ability to detect the unknown. Okay? And that's where the problem lies. Who here has read the Verizon data breach report? Just hands up, who's read that? Guys, there will be more. There's a few, some nervous people. Imagine how I feel. So what's interesting is, say a third of malware is customized. So, at the time of the attack, there aren't typically signatures available to detect the attack. So your analysts sitting in the SOC have no idea, and it goes straight under the radar. So a third of malware is customized. And the other malware that isn't customized is just simply repacked and obfuscated. So there's very little code in terms of redevelopment. And they go back to kind of a 0-day or kind of 0 detection rate. And I'll discuss that in a second. Okay, let's look at SIM very briefly. I look at SIM as a phone bill, okay? So it's correlating events across, firewalls, your switches, your IDS, etc. And in the end, all you have is a summary of an event. Someone logged in, someone logged out, executable detected, buffer overflow detected, Trojan download detected. So what? What happened before that SIM event? What happened after that SIM event? I want to see the forensic payloads to support that log that's been generated. Interestingly, if anyone's read the Cisco CERT team blog recently, they've actually completely stopped using security information and event management platforms. There's too much watering and feeding required, and they've actually forgotten the kind of correlation piece, and they're focusing on, collect the logs and index them so I can query them very quickly. But I'm not going to waste any more time on consulting to, build these correlation rules. Okay? I just want to collect the logs and index them. So there's a lack of, next one, so back in the bunker days. So I remember one time, I actually ran the SOC team, so I had about 5 analysts that was working for me at the time at Symantec. And I remember one time at 3 a.m. in the morning, we've got a proprietary SIM solution, and I've detected an Nmap scan, okay, so a reconnaissance scan that's bypassed the firewall, okay, not very difficult. And then I can see my IDS log saying buffer overflow detected. So it correlates an alert. So I then find the phone number for the system owner. We were protecting about 400 clients at this time. And I'd say, oh, Nmap scan detected, buffer overflow detected against this server, which has X criticality. And I remember the system owner, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so he's pretty upset that I've woken him up. Okay, I've just been watching Sky News, Sky Sports, and films until this happened. But they were frustrated. That's great, James. What happened an hour before that SIM event generated? What happened an hour afterwards or a day afterwards? Again, it's very frustrating for an analyst because you don't have all the details to hand in a timely manner. It's very frustrating for the system owner because they can't really do much with that information. Okay? IPS. Okay? So I should stress that we do need these as part of our defense in depth strategy, but we're just over-relying on these. So think of an IDS or an IPS. It's looking for patterns, it generates a signature or an alert for you to react to. But in the end, it's just giving you a snapshot in time. So who here has seen Breaking Bad? I don't want to ruin it. There's no, everyone seen Breaking Bad? Okay, I'm addicted to this. I'm really gutted it's over, actually. But think about this moment here with Lydia, where Lydia's putting in some sugar, well, so what? Is it poisonous? Associate that with an executable file. So an IDS says, exe detected. So maybe it's looked at the payload and seen the MZ value or the DOS loader to say, oh, it's an executable. And then that goes to your SIM. Well, so what? Is it malicious? Is it legitimate? What's it doing to my system? So an IPS on its own is also not good enough. And also think about how many people buy IPS to block. Oh, I need something that blocks. I've been running around EMEA for 4 years, and I've yet to find a customer that is comfortable with putting those devices in line, that's actually blocking. When I was working for the telco and new signatures came available, I had IPS, and I was afraid of putting those signatures in just in case it blocked legitimate transactions because I was protecting the telco's store for buying phones and contracts. Imagine me applying those signatures in line, and it's blocking legitimate transactions, and that telco loses millions, in transactions because of my signatures. I mean, my job is over. So I wonder how many people also share that fear in this room. So the challenge in keeping pace, really in the post-prevention world, is there's 100,000 bits of malware released every day. So we're always going to be one step behind. The moment we build signatures to detect these malware variants, the attackers just repack and they go back to zero detection. And there's always going to be a delay between the time we first observe an attack and the time the vendors get their hands on a sample, build a signature, and then send that to the global community. There's a delay. And this delay is not hours, typically, it is weeks and months. So I'm going to give you an example of the BEGMAN Trojan I found a couple of years ago, still very relevant today, but how it took the AV vendor 8 months to build the signature, to detect it. That's a long time for the malware to be running around your network. But by being more proactive, as I'm going to discuss, you can reduce that window. And as I did, I reduced that window for that particular client from 8 months to about 2 days. And I'll show you how. So anyway, this delay between an attack and a signature being generated and updated, it's basically creating a large window of opportunity for the attacker. Okay? And these attackers are exploiting this window every single day. And this is something we need to focus on. We need to improve our detection capability. And all these people that think, oh, I'm going to block everything and prevent everything. Well, the attacker has the initiative. They choose where, they choose when, they choose how. You can't stop that, okay? So we just have to accept that fact. In terms of breach detection, as you can see, it's increasing. So breaches undiscovered for months or more. You can see that at the increase there to 66% of breaches take months. It's not good. Now, some people will say, oh, that's because of advanced persistent threats. Every time I hear that term, I fall asleep. I heard a term the other day was, we block negative day. That's impressive. 0 day is good, but negative day, that's impressive. That's blocking something before the attacker even came up with the idea. So I don't like buzzwords, so you'll see none of that in here, apart from that moment, but I'm dissing it really. So people say, oh, because of the advanced attacks, this is why they're getting through. Well, interestingly, the use of custom malware has significantly decreased over time. Okay? So around 2010, about 60% of successful breaches use custom malware. But attackers have very quickly realized that off-the-shelf code is just as effective. So only 30% of breaches involved custom malware in 2012. And they've realized that just take something off the shelf, repack it, whether you're using, I don't know, Morphine, UPX, Cryptex, whatever you're using, to repack that code to bypass their IDS and antivirus signatures. I've got a running joke with a certain intelligence entity where we don't call it advanced, we call it adequate, or just enough to compromise the network. It doesn't take much. I'll give you a very simple obfuscation repack example. I appreciate this is very generalized and very simple, but imagine hello world, that document.write, was an exploit. The AV vendors get their hands on that code and try and build a signature. Once you receive that signature, the moment you see that piece of code, an alert is generated and your team can respond. But instead of wasting time trying to rebuild that exploit, example of me using the Dean Edwards JavaScript packer, very basic packer, that turns that string of text into the one below. And I know it's a very simple example, but it's this concept, how easy it is to repack within seconds and reuse the same code to bypass your existing defenses. So where are we today? So this is based on Verizon's 2013 data breach report. Okay? 78% of breaches are taking months and years to discover. I'll focus on months. So 62% of breaches are taking months. That's an unacceptable window of opportunity. Had to focus on Adobe. Okay, so breach of the week. It's a tough one. So who here has heard about the Adobe breach? Okay, right. So looking between the lines, it's very interesting because 40 gigs of their source code was found, not by their security team, it was found by third parties. Okay, Alex Holden, etc. I think it's Brian Kibbs as well. So a third party found that 40 gigs of, I think it was Fusion and Adobe Reader code on a hacking server. Okay, not Adobe's internal security team. Now they are aware of an incident. Okay, so Adobe were investigating this potential breach in September 17th. Okay, but the source code was accessed mid-August. So in this example about windows of opportunity, that's a 1-month window between the attackers first touching that code and then attempting to leak it out, which they did successfully, to the internal Adobe team actually realizing something's not quite right and then trying to go back in time and piece together what happened. So that's an example of a 1-month window of the attacker that left a long time ago. And we need to improve on that. So think of this from a CISO perspective. Okay? So think of the CISO of Adobe. They're in a very difficult position, okay? Because when this happens, the CISO is asking very difficult questions to the security team. Who did this to us? How did they do it? Can we be sure it's over? Will it happen again? These are very difficult questions that are very hard to answer with just a SIM solution or an IDS or an IPS because you don't have that context, you don't have that intelligence. And also, every time a breach happens, the CISO is in direct line of fire. Their job is on the line. So you can imagine, a breach is what keeps them up all night, or the fear of the unknown. And it's not a case of if a breach occurs, it's when. So this is why we need to focus on, well, when it does happen, we need the ability to go back in time, forensically piece together what happened, but quickly, not weeks or months, within days even hours, to understand how exactly did they get in, how exactly did they get out. I didn't realize there was a screen over there. Okay. So when prevention fails, this is my message, when prevention fails, the only thing that remains that you can do is rapid detection and rapid response. My point, about 70% of attacks are discovered by third parties, whether that's partners, customers, law enforcement agencies knocking on your door telling you some bad news. This is again linked to the Adobe issue, that it was obviously a third party that found the code that, on a staging server. Okay? And also, a lot of our security teams are firefighting. They get the sense that there's been an infection, like an antivirus alert says this system's infected. Or think of, obviously, FireEye that just went IPO, saying there's a botnet infection. Okay, and you run and you clean those systems, and then tomorrow they're infected again. So you're just running around, chasing your tail, cleaning these infections. But really, we need to go from firefighting to root cause analysis. How exactly did they get in the first place? Oh, okay, well, maybe a user saw an email, a phishing email, clicked on that email, went to a server that hosted no malware, but maybe there was some iframe or JavaScript redirecting that user to another server, and so on and so forth, eventually sending them to a drive-by exploit server, where then malicious PDFs and exe files and jar files are downloaded, and then my current tools are detecting. So you need to understand how exactly did they get in. Maybe they went to a legitimate website that was compromised, and that's how they were redirected. It's important to know the root cause. And also, attacks are pervasive by nature. You put a firewall in place to ensure legitimate communication, okay? But you open up port 80 for your web traffic. You don't know maybe some of you know the IP addresses of Google, but you need DNS servers, so you open port 53 UDP. You need to send emails, you open up port 25. Maybe FTP, port 21 or 20. And these attackers are leveraging those paths of trust. I was actually at RSA during the breach. That's a very difficult time. But think about the RSA breach. Spear phishing email with an Excel sheet with a zero-day vulnerability you have no hope in detecting from a source that you trust. So why would the internal user of RSA not click on that link? Once they click that link, compromise, there's a poison ivy remote access Trojan that connects out to the attackers, so they've got a foothold in the RSA network, find that secure ID data, and then they leaked it out over FTP. So they sent that sensitive secure ID traffic. This is all public information. It's all been out there for a while. But they sent that data, like the Adobe situation, they sent that data over FTP channels, hiding in plain sight. I mean, how are you going to spot that, and prevent that? You can't. The best thing to do is find it early, record everything so you can go back in time and piece together how they got in and how they got out. So the challenge or the objective is to, how much time have I got, actually? Am I good for time? 5? Oh, that's not good. So reduce the attacker's free time. Okay, that's the objective here. And we need complete network visibility to do that. So we need to collect all the data. I know it sounds amazing, but you need to collect all the logs and index it, all the packets and index it, okay? All the flow data, index it, so you can query it very, very quickly to give you complete visibility. Okay? So record, classify, and index all packets and logs. So you can retrospectively go back in time and find out how they got in, how they got out, but also allows you to be more proactive in real-time analysis. Why is there a small packed obfuscated exe file being downloaded from a domain that was registered 10 days ago, I don't know, from a server in, Germany, for example, and in that time that employee downloaded 15 exes and PDFs and jar files within a few seconds. I mean, those indicators of compromise allow your security analyst to be more proactive and find malware before the signatures are available. Actually, I will mention that, Gartner. So at the moment, 10% of our budget is assigned to rapid detection and response. And Gartner have actually said that, in about 7 years' time, 3/4 of our budget will be assigned to these type of technologies. So it's an emerging technology. That's where we're going. So think of a reactive analyst. Someone that might be aware of the threat landscape and hears about a new Trojan or a new vulnerability, but they're just sitting there waiting for an update. So from there, for their AV and IDS updates. And when those technologies trigger, you then respond. But you need to be proactive as well. Okay? You need to work on the assumption you're already compromised, get complete visibility of the network so you can go hunting and find stuff before the security vendors provide you with an update. Okay, so focus on indicators of compromise. Okay? And in doing so, you will find stuff before the updates are available. Now, this is a real example that I stumbled on doing some malware analysis on a customer network. Okay? So I saw the download of this game exe file. and the domain was skygamenew.com, and it had only been registered for about 30 days. So I'm thinking, that's interesting. From an Nginx server, it was a small file, it was packed. So there's all these indicators saying it's worthy of an investigation, and it went straight past their antivirus vendor of choice. I won't say who the AV vendor was, okay? But when I analyzed the detection rates, okay, so I extracted the file and did some sandboxing and confirmed it was malicious, only 4 of 43 antivirus vendors flagged it as malicious. So it's a very low detection rate. 16 hours later, I checked again, and 8 AV vendors detected it, but not the customer's antivirus. So this is actually zero-day malware in the context of their environment. Okay? So I thought, this is interesting. Let's track the detection rate until their AV vendor flags it. About 2 weeks after I found this malware, Microsoft published this Win32 BEGMAN report and said it was very standard, kind of remote access Trojan, key logging, etc. There's nothing advanced about it, just another malware variant. But when I checked the detection rates again, there's a much better detection rate. 60% of all antivirus vendors flagged the malware that I stumbled on by getting visibility of the network. But Microsoft did not detect my variant of the BEGMAN Trojan. Okay? So then you start thinking, was this targeting the company? Okay? Around October 19th, the AV vendor my customer was using then detected it. Okay? That's an 8-month window between when it got into the network and when their AV flagged it as malicious. But by being more proactive, by getting visibility of the network, I found it within 2 days. Okay? 8 months, 2 days. So when I talk about rapid detection, it is achievable. Okay? Now, the only reason it took me 2 days is because I was not on site 2 days ago when the actual download happened. Okay? So I turned up 2 days later, went back in time, saw the download of a suspicious file, confirmed it was malicious. Back to my reducing the attacker's free time. From 8 months, if they just sat there waiting for an update, and reduced that yellow line to 2 days. Think of the damage limitation. By being more proactive, just think how much you've saved the company, whether that's brand, reputation, sensitive data leaking out. It is possible. This is not the only way, but this is what I find effective. So don't wait for signatures. Okay, I've almost done. 2 minutes, and then I'll be done. Indicators of compromise. So once you've got visibility of the entire network, you can start seeing patterns or combining indicators of compromise. So as an example, as I'm going to show you, actually happening. Here's 47,000 sessions. What do I look at first? That's too much data. Okay? So when I'm recording stuff, I'm identifying countries of interest, malicious IPs and domains based on threat intelligence you've imported. So record everything and compare it with any threat intelligence you can get your hands on. Okay? Are these files small, packed, and obfuscated? And by combining all those indicators of compromise, you can filter 47,000 events into 4 events. Now that's something that an analyst can manually investigate. Okay, it's much more manageable. So let me show you in practice. Sorry the screen's small. But 47,000 events, that's far too many. And I'm recording all my traffic, whether that's logs or full packet, preferably both. Just show me traffic which involves countries on my watch list. So I do have Russia there, Romania, Israel. It depends on the company and who they typically do business with. I've now only got 1,000 events. That's still too many for my analyst to proactively investigate. So let's zoom in even further, pivot the data set, and say, only show me traffic where it involves countries of interest, and I see the download of files I typically associate with malware, such as PDFs, EXE files, JAR files, etc. Now I only have 220 events. Okay, that's getting better. Okay, what about those where the files of interest that were downloaded by my employee were delivered by Nginx servers? So that on its own doesn't mean anything, but if I see a lot of files being downloaded from an Nginx server from a domain registered only 5 days ago or a week ago, those combinations, in my experience, normally it's a good hit to finding malware. It's just one example. But then the ability to zoom in and actually pull out those files, not just have a log that it happened, the ability to then extract those files, then do malware analysis. Whether you've got a GFI or a threat grid or a FireEye malware analysis service, whatever you're using, the ability to then pull those files out retrospectively or in real time and analyze that content. And in doing so, confirm that I found some malware. It's got about a 38% antivirus coverage. Did my antivirus vendor pick it up? Okay. So in terms of a framework, and I'm done, everyone will get these slides, but focus on the crime methodology. What are you doing to achieve this in a timely manner? How are you getting context before and after any IDS event or any SIM event? Okay? How are you determining the root cause? How quickly are you determining the root cause? Okay? Impact. It's no good saying, oh, I found a system that was infected and this is how they got infected. How many other systems were infected? Understand the full scope of the problem. How big is this? Is this a contained event or is this a mass breach? Okay? By having all that intelligence, you can then effectively mitigate the situation. Rather than just firefighting, you know exactly how they got in, exactly how they got out, okay? And exactly which systems are infected, okay, and how they got infected. So you can now truly mitigate without being blind, okay? And then finally be able to eradicate. Final slide. Thank you for your patience. Unfortunately, this really good quote is actually from Lord of the Rings, but it will suit my purposes. So I wish the breach had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And obviously Gandalf, being wise, has said, well, it's not up for you to decide. All you can do is, use the time effectively. So, a breach is inevitable. What are you going to do about it? Okay? So my final message is don't focus just on prevention. Focus on rapid detection and rapid response. And also, I lied. One more slide. It only takes one click to compromise your network. So I love this example. So who wants to be a millionaire? Which of the following is the largest? The elephant or the moon? This person actually chose the elephant. Now, I'm sure we have someone like this in every single one of our companies, okay? And they're probably receiving spear phishing emails, okay? I bet that they're going to click on an email that's targeting them, okay? And then your network's going to be compromised. Thank you for putting up with my irritating enthusiasm. My apologies for the translator. He's looking a bit stressed now. Thumbs up. That's great. Does anyone have any questions? Yes. I'm sorry, that's all we've got time for. Goodbye.
Hi, thanks for the talk.
No problem.
Just wondering, so your detection of those EXEs and malicious files,
Yeah.
is that done from agents running on your clients' laptops or at the network perimeter?
Yeah, so this was from the network perimeter, but I think on that point, you do need endpoint protection as well. So my focus or my 4 years of experience have been on network analysis, session reconstruction, file extraction. So then you can do your malware analysis and maybe static PE analysis. But you also need endpoint protection as well. So.
Okay, because so as a pen tester, what I do, I always use SSL and I always register domains or use IPs in the country that I'm attacking.
Yeah.
So if it's a UK company, UK IP, SSL, so that won't get detected.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it's interesting, actually, because Bluecoat acquired a SSL visibility product from Netronome. Don't know if you guys heard about that. So I'm actually from Solera, which was acquired by Bluecoat. And Solera is the full packet capture piece, as we discussed. And then also Bluecoat acquired the SSL visibility solution to actually give you visibility into SSL communication, whether you have the private keys or not. So it's a man in the middle to give you visibility. But in terms of I suppose advanced attacks, like you say, 80% of attacks are using SSL. This is why Bluecoat actually acquired the SSL appliance to give you that visibility. It's a good point.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
No problem.